the NBA draft. Now, I'm not so sure how many may have read the article yesterday by Dennis Dodd, who spoke again to Arizona President Robert Robbins, but there's one quote or two. Dennis will join us today at 4:30, and I'll tell you up front, the interview in the segment was recorded. He was on his way back from covering football at Kansas State, and so he did do the show or the segment by phone. But what's interesting to me was this quote, because Robbins is the one who put out, and I like him. I like what he kind of seems like he's not afraid to talk, likes to talk, and he seems like you've heard that he might be as savvy when it comes to sports and athletics as anybody. And the question was brought up about how united they were. He had told CBS Sports and others 2 weeks ago, suggesting Arizona had options if it wasn't satisfied with the Pac-12's new deal. In those remarks, he said the league was 95% united, while simultaneously noting that Arizona had the ability to drive to Lubbock, where Big 12 team Texas Tech, of course, is located. He then responded yesterday to the article that Dennis wrote. It wasn't saying that because I was emboldened because we have option. There is no deal or no agreement where if everything blows up, we've got some place to go. When I read that, and I asked Dennis that in the segment, and I don't know how you guys reacted to that. I sent you the story. It was almost as if he's saying they don't have an option if something happens, but that's not what he said, and also what we've kind of heard, that there is that option. If Arizona, if someone was to leave, they might be the first ones out the door. And I hope, again, for the Pac-12's sake, that they keep everything together.
Yeah, it's weird that, like, he said some things like, I don't know where people are getting this, or I don't know why that's out there. Well, like, you kind of said it, man.
He gave the August 15th date.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of said that you hope to have it done by then or whatever, or the final, like, that's why, like, people think that. So, you know, you're the one who put it out there in the ether. You know, that I think this could all be solved if the commissioner would just come out and say something.
Okay,
but
I think it might have been either Bob Thompson and or Jim Williams. One of the two brought this up. I asked them about that. I can't remember which one it was because they both have. I've stayed in touch with them a lot. It doesn't mean that George Kliavkoff every day is not having Zoom and or conference calls with all the presidents. He's talking to the ones that matter, right? And that would be his presidents, right? Isn't that who he needs to go? Yeah. So there has been kind of an airtight from him, and you wonder if sometimes he has said some things that has come back to haunt him, like 40 million or 40-something million or whatever. I don't know. But Robbins talked to Dennis Dodd. He's out of pocket now for a couple of weeks as he is going overseas to open up, I think, what is going to be a kind of an University of Arizona campus in the Middle East.
Yeah, I mean, you can take it however you want to take it. I've seen some take a line from Gene Taylor during a radio interview and say that suggests that Brett Yormark's not talking to anybody at all. And really, if you listen to it, it's like, is that what he's saying, or can you look at it a different way? And guess what? You can look at it a different way if you want to. Like, that doesn't sound that confident. Oh, that sounds like he's not saying that, but he's saying this. And like, and that's like what pretty much every quote in this entire realignment saga is, depending on who you ask how they read it. That's the take that you're gonna get. I mean, that's what it seems like to me. And so, you know, I heard that. I guess it was like a Gene Taylor blurb or something, and I didn't walk away from it going like, oh, man, they're not having any discussions whatsoever. I just walked away going like, well, if Brett Yormark's talking to somebody, then he's probably not letting Gene Taylor know about it directly, or it's not something that is, you know, worth going down the road of speaking about it because it's such a little type of thing.
Well, Gene Taylor would know, and
right.
Like Mac has said many times about how they're ready to make decisions or moves if something was to happen.
Right, but he basically said, like, there's nothing on the horizon, but, again, like, what have we been saying this entire time? I was like, yeah, there's nothing until there's a TV deal done.
Yes,
like, that's
exactly right.
Again, there's nothing until a TV deal gets done. What's the answer to the next part of expansion as far as the Big 12 or Pac-12 is concerned? Again, there's nothing until a TV deal gets done, and we just have to keep reminding ourselves of that. So, yeah, I mean, if you want to take a bunch out of that, then Gene Taylor says they're not talking to anybody. Or Brett Yormark, to his knowledge, is not talking to anybody, however he phrased it. But we know that if all of a sudden the schools that they're not talking to were to give them a ring or were to be in a situation where they're not so happy, then what do we know? We know Brett Yormark's waiting by his phone.
Yep.
We know he's got somebody on speed dial. That's what we know. But again, it all comes back to this TV deal. So, yeah, I mean, Robbins is somebody who was out there. I mean, 2 weeks ago, he had people convinced there was a TV deal coming like the next day based on the way that he was talking. He had everybody that was when the pack swung back, so to speak, with their own little PR, and everybody got quiet for the last couple weeks, and the waters calmed down and all of that, and yet here he is, and he's definitely not as confident as he was in the previous article that I read, but, just kind of, I guess, saying the same thing of they're waiting on a TV deal. Again, going back to that part for them, I mean, that's the key here. And so there's no rush, it appears. They still got a little over a year until that time comes up to where they're, going up against it. And I guess there's not really concern for them right now. But, certainly the longer this drags on, the closer you get. And at some point, if it's another 2-3 months down the line and you're getting into that 1 year period, then I think everybody start to get a little bit nervous about what exactly is taking so long. But right now they're putting up a good front and saying that they think everything's okay, or he is saying that he thinks everything's fine, and there's no need for I guess panic. So good for the Pac-12. Let's see what comes down the pipeline. I think he also said that he doesn't expect it to be as much streaming as I guess maybe it was thought to have been when really all that talk was getting out there a couple weeks back. I believe that he said something that he still feels like it'll be mostly linear in that article, which is good news for Pac fans because that wasn't necessarily what you thought.
The quote was, "I think this deal is going to have a heavy traditional analog cable piece. I think there may be some streaming in it, but I don't think anybody would want to go majority streaming."
Yeah. And so there's a lot of think, which is what I was going to get to in that article of I think. There's a lot of that in there. But, yeah, he's saying the right things if you're a pro Pac-12 person. That bodes more well for that side of things than rattling the cage with more expansion. But I do think he leaves it well open enough that if you think that if something goes haywire, there's still a chance something could pop off, then I think you could read into that as well. Again, it's in the eye of the beholder, and I can see it from both sides with that article.
Again, I have heard nothing to suggest the deal is imminent. There are these things about, we want to wait until after the Final Four. That has nothing to do with it. It has to do with assessing who is the right fit, who assesses us.
Well, plus they got to go on spring break, right?
I hope Commissioner gets something done sooner rather than later so that the whole thing stops so we don't have to focus on it. I am perfectly willing to sit here and wait. So there's that on the story, and we'll have Dennis Dodd